I have a really dark secret to tell you, Isaac.
I did not want to put this book down.
I'm not saying I'm wrong. Like, I think that
I'm saying you're wrong. I'm just kidding. I think Phoebe's on an orthogonal third plane.
Yeah.
Here.
I have this prepared in my head because I know Phil and I are about to like duke it out.
I had no idea
so
that we were gonna have so many different views on what
viewpoints.
This book was.
Yeah, same. And we all loved the book.
Yeah.
And we all read a different book.
Let's go beyond the first page. Let's go beyond the first page.
Welcome back, Second Pagers. This is Beyond the First Page podcast with siblings Phoebe, Phil, and Isaac. I'm Phoebe.
I'm Phil.
I'm Isaac.
And this is Club Meeting 31, Playground by Richard Powers. As always, this is a book club style podcast, so we will be talking about major plot points and spoilers from throughout the book. So if you don't want Playground by Richard Powers to be ruined for you, really recommend that you read the book and then come on and listen to the discussion. And if you like the discussion, please feel free to follow us on Spotify, YouTube, give us a 5-star review if you enjoyed the talk that we had. And as always, we start off with a icebreaker to get us, in the discussion mood. And as a part of this book, one of the conversations that 3 of the main characters had was what the Sanctum Sanctorum was. And so today, the opening comment or the icebreaker that we will have is, what is R3 Sanctum Sanctorum? And I'll just explain a little bit about what that is. So in the book, it's the way I understood it, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, is that it was the place or the thing that they were working on that was like this big project that no one really knew about, but it was kind of like not their safe haven, but like their secret place that they went to have a creative outlet. Was that a good way to
so
describe
it's biblical, actually. Yeah, it refers to the Holy of Holies. So Moses had the tabernacle, and then only priests were allowed inside the tabernacle. And then inside of the tabernacle, there was the Ark of the Covenant, and that was in its own separate room. And only once a year was one priest allowed inside that room, and that room was the Sanctum Sanctorum. So it literally means the Holy of Holies.
Wow. Great fact, Phil. Thank you. I love when we share a fun fact along with our icebreaker. And so I will let either one of you go before me if you want to.
I think mine is actually on the dance floor of some wedding playing a banger. That is my Sanctum Sanctorum.
But Phil, if it's done in front of everybody, like, does that count? Okay.
I mean, I'm counting it. I feel very genuine.
Yeah. You let go a little bit.
You could rock out as a solo.
I don't think I could, yeah. Like, I hate going in the middle of a dance circle. Like, I don't like that.
Cool. That's not what I was expecting you to say. I actually didn't know what to expect, so good one. Isaac, what about you?
Mine, so I felt like very inadequate thinking of this, like what is my Sanctum Sanctorum? And at first I was like, well, is it your happy place? And that is not necessarily true. So I think mine is, I got into journaling maybe like 5 years ago or something. And I go in and out of it, but since then I've probably filled up 3 or 4 moleskin notebooks. They're like really nice to write in. They have a soft cover and stuff. But I kind of just like write ideas, use it as like reflection. You see studies or read stuff is like, if you write stuff down, then you can not be thinking about it anymore. So I think that either the exercise of journaling or just those journals would be mine, because they're definitely stuff that I've like never shared with anyone probably in them.
Well, are your journals deep thoughts? Are they
sometimes
like, it's stuff you wouldn't want people to read, or is it more just day to day?
It depends on the mood I'm in. Sometimes they are pretty deep. Sometimes they're just like, wow, today really sucks, or today rocked. I usually do it in the
Yeah.
morning, so I don't really know what the
day is going to bring.
Yeah.
Wait, so then what are you journaling about if it's in the morning?
In the morning, I just whatever's in your head, it's a free write. So it depends what kind of mood. Like a lot of times, this is the stuff I have to get done, and it goes back and forth between you're wasting your life to you got this to
There's Isaac's internal
Yeah.
cheerleader that we've talked about before.
Yes.
That's so funny.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I was not expecting you to say that. So I thought at first too that it was like your safe space, but I think I took it as the characters it was really what they were creating that was most important to them. And so much like Phil, I think I'm going to say something that we are putting out to the world, and it's this podcast, because it's the only thing I think that I've really taken, not a huge risk, but it is kind of an awkward thing to just post your thoughts out onto the internet. And that's not really something that I don't think any three of us would do usually. And so we are posting this, and our closest like families and friends have access to our inner thoughts about books. And that for me is a risk. We also put a lot of effort into it. So I would say that this podcast is mine. And it's like one of the only creative things I do, really. So
Well, I'm glad you get to do it with us. I'm glad we get to do it with you.
Yeah. Do you guys feel that a little bit or not really? So
Yeah,
different
definitely.
than what you're doing.
I'm comforted by the fact that no one listens. So
I'm not. I want our viewership up.
Yeah.
Tell your friends.
Yeah, we want our sanctum sanctorum to the world. That's what we want. Cool. Okay, Isaac, do you want to give us Playground in 60 seconds?
Yes. So this is Playground by Richard Powers in 60 seconds. Todd, Rafi, Ina, and Evelyn are separated by thousands of miles in several decades, but their futures are all intertwined. Todd and Rafi become friends in high school, although from very different backgrounds. Todd is the only child of a wealthy Chicago parents. Rafi is from a rough neighborhood in the South Side. They bond over games of intellect and strategy and become close enough for Rafi to share his darkest secrets of his traumatic past. When Todd suffers a personal tragedy of his own, Rafi is there for him and changes where he's going to college to support him. In college, Rafi meets and falls in love with Ina, a graduate student from the Pacific Islands. The three become very close, but after an experience where they attempt to show each other their true selves, their sanctum sanctorums, something is broken and they begin to drift apart. After graduation, Rafi takes on a master's degree, and Todd founds a website that is destined to grow into one of the most popular social media sites in the world. Rafi and Todd's friendship is broken completely when Rafi finds that Ina has gone to Todd for relationship help, and Todd has told her his darkest secret. Meanwhile, Evelyn, a 20 to 30 years older than Todd, Rafi, and Ina, grew from a scared young child to a world-renowned scientist, diver, and author, propelled to the public stage by her book on oceans that actually captivated Todd as a child. All of their lives intersect when Todd funds a venture to build communities on the open ocean, in the island that Ina and Rafi now live on, and Evelyn is currently staying from one more diving adventure in her life, is chosen as the hub where these cities will be manufactured.
Okay. And Phil, you're making a little face there. What is your thought?
That was a really confusing sentence to me.
Well, I will say that I think that the reason that the ending of that sentence was so confusing is because the ending of this book is so confusing. And I want to jump right into plot because I think that no, wait, just stay with me here, people. Because I have this prepared in my head because I know Phil and I are about to like duke it out.
I'm not about to duke it out. Yeah.
Just wait. Just wait to hear what I'm going to say. So when I was doing research for this, and I just want to start all of this by saying I think this is a great book club book because I missed a huge part about this book, and I'm curious if Isaac, and again, just like spoiler alert, read the book if you don't want this to get spoiled for you. None of, like, the whole island thing was made up. It's an AI.
I just don't understand how you didn't get that.
I reread the last.
Like, dude, just like what the
hey,
we were talking about what we were talking about in the book.
We listen and we don't judge moment, Phil. This is a book club.
You don't make the rules. This
Yes, I
is
do.
the
You're not here to say like
No,
what
I
what do you like?
understand. I understand. It was just very odd to me how you could have missed that, I
I
guess.
don't
I
think
reread the
it's I don't think it's crazy that it was missed, and I don't necessarily know if I agree with you that the whole thing was made up.
It wasn't. It was, I mean, but I don't know what you got out of this story, I guess. So,
maybe we should do like here's what my reality was leaving this book. So my reality leaving this book was Todd Keene developed this AI. It went to the island and communicated with the people ahead of time to say like I am coming because he could not because he had Lewy body. He pre-programmed it ahead of time to do all this because he knew this was going to happen. He found Rafi. Rafi faked his own death, and so did Evelyn. They are on the island now, all living in, very simpatico. And at the end, Todd gets to see his friends again and gets to be forgiven after his transgressions with all his friends and his whole life kind of thing. That was my reality leaving this book.
that is a
Phil,
wild take.
What was
I've
your
not thought of
reality?
that. My reality was that I think that was my reality until, like, I thought that that's what was going to happen until you realize that Rafi had died. And I guess that was the wake up moment for me. So my reality was after they separated and Rafi basically wrote him for the check. I mean, it does skip like 20, 30 years since like that check is like they stopped sort of talking about each other. So post that, everything the computer makes up on the island, whatever, is fantasy. Todd Keene's life isn't talked about at all post that, except the Lewy bodies. I think the Lewy bodies are real. So the entire island thing is fantasy. I think that the Evelyn thing is her childhood was mostly fantasy based off what Todd had sort of thought of because he fell in love with this book. But I
Interesting.
think
So
that
her as an
that
entire character was fake,
no,
basically.
she was real. She wrote that book, but I think Todd fed the AI what he sort of thought of her and maybe some snippets of her biography. I think all of like probably the dialogue and stuff was made up by the
Okay.
AI.
Okay.
But yeah, that was my reality.
Okay.
Okay, so mine
Interesting.
is like close to the opposite of your guys's. The I think Todd is the unreliable narrator because he has relied too much on AI, and then he is now retelling the story. The story begins with him having the Lewy bodies, him being like, "Look, I want to get this story out here." So he has developed this AI and now is relying on it to tell the story, and the AI has not given you the reader or him as the person throughout his life, and then when he is like really relying on it to be his memory, the not full correct information. So I think that like everything in the non-italicized text, so not from the standpoint of Todd, is true.
Wow. Whereas
And
I
then
am exactly the
yes,
opposite. I think
and then
Phoebe's
you have
on an
to
orthogonal third plane
yeah, and
here.
you have to
But yeah.
question some of the stuff that Todd
He's saying.
gives you as the book and therefore the AI is progressing because you're becoming more and more reliant on it, and it's just like the Google AI where you ask it something and it will just tell you something even though it's not true or not. I think the takeaway is twofold. There was so much, and we can talk about this in the writing, but there was like, I thought the writing was great in like, especially of the oceans and the art was, but that's all like real life stuff.
Right.
Whereas the AI is this nebulous internet sitting in front of your computer nerding out thing. So I think even the message could just be like, go enjoy the real stuff. You know that's real.
I don't think that's what I took away from it. What I thought was beautiful, the most beautiful part of this perhaps the ocean writing and stuff was really cool and her diving was really cool, but was when Rafi and Todd Keane were playing Go and they were like realizing everything was a game to them. And that for you was all AI generated.
I don't think that part was AI. Or I mean,
Okay.
it was all the italicized is the AI writing for him, but
some of it can be real.
Yeah.
I think I took it as like Isaac was saying that his early information was accurate because Todd like could remember it better. But as the Lewy bodies progressed, maybe the older information, they don't know when it happened. Maybe
I think that
can see
makes sense.
Yeah, like as it progresses, so you have to. He started in this lab, right? When he takes them to the Sanctorum, he talks about how like it's going to take 40 million years or whatever just to input all the information into this 1.0 version of the AI computer that they're building.
Yeah.
Like they started building this before you even had desktop computers. So AI was so
right,
far...
but who wrote this story? Who wrote the italicized? Different computers? Different AI?
Yeah, I guess it could be
that
the same.
mattered.
It could be the same.
I think if it's the same, then it doesn't really make sense that throughout time.
But it's building off of
produce...
the stuff it was fed before. So the older AIs were fed, like just typed into X is, this is this, this is this, this is this. And that's how it learned. Whereas the older progression stuff is now going into that information and pulling out more stuff. But it had to be fed true things.
But what about the part where Todd literally thanks it for making the story of the book? Like, Todd says, thank you for making this ending for me. I needed this ending. Is he thanking it because he wouldn't have been able to remember because of the Lewy bodies, or is he thanking it because he needed closure? I took it as he needed closure.
Yeah, I took it as he needed to get this story out of him. Like, it was his way of... It was like the speak to talk. He was holding it and telling it this stuff.
Yeah. I don't think... you could 100% be right. I don't think there's anything to say that you're wrong. I do like the fact that you can interpret it both ways.
Well, I think it's interesting because the point that Isaac brought up, which is this complex idea of AI and like when to trust it and when not to. And I think also it's hard. Maybe, Phil, you have a bigger understanding of AI, or Isaac, than I do. But I don't even think people who are creating AI right now know about AI. Like, it is so complex. But I think, Isaac, your takeaway was cool because it really did highlight, like, you can't always trust. And we've seen this so many times with ChatGPT and any other AI that you interact with. It can lie to you. It can tell you things that are not true. Even if the model is good, even if it's being fed accurate information, it can spit out something that's not true. So I think that was an interesting aspect. I think reading the internet, I think Phil is correct in his takeaway that the island was fake. The island.
I don't think anyone's correct. I think you could be totally
I think
be
Richard
right.
Powers has come out and said the truth here. He knows what the truth is.
Let's take a 13th century view of art, and it's God's once it comes out. So
no, and it is, and
yeah,
that's why I'm not saying Isaac's wrong. I'm not saying I'm wrong. Like, I think
I'm saying you're wrong. I'm just teasing.
I think you can have
that yours,
my takeaway.
I think you could
and
too.
It's just you're not thinking deeper really about the book. And
no, I think you are thinking
bad?
deeper, but you're not thinking deeper about the technological aspect of the book.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what I loved about this book. I mean, it's a 400-page book. 38 divided by 19 divided by 2, 95% of the book was not about AI, and then you have the last 5% maybe, but according to Phoebe, no. And I think you can take that.
I do think that you can get something out of it, even if you had my viewpoint, because as I mentioned, the characters are great. The writing is great, in my opinion. I did have like one small critique about the writing, but I'd be curious to hear your guys' thought. But yeah, I think all the characters were very necessary. The only character that I didn't really like was the queen on the island. I just didn't understand the perspective there. But I think going off of like if it was actually just AI generated, I think that the AI was just taking a typical island influenced woman and putting her into this scenario potentially. I just didn't really get her as the character. I thought all the other characters were great. And I thought that, like you mentioned, Phil, the relationship between Rafi and Todd was really cool. I actually bought Go because of how much they enjoyed games. I thought it just sounded so
Go
interesting.
is
And I
so
thought that
hard.
was,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, Jaden and I played it once and we couldn't figure it out. So now we're going to try to join like a club at the library.
That's going to be a very fun
Intense.
social club. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it really, and like the whole Evelyn's aspect too of her diving and her whole persona, I thought was really awesome and inspiring as a woman. And so yeah, I thought the characters were really great, and I'm curious to hear what you guys thought about them.
I think that the characters were good. I think that from I like, here's where this becomes so multidimensional, because I think interpretations of characters become different if you view the book as Isaac
How
viewed the book.
you,
Whereas
yeah.
so I was like, Evelyn is stupid.
As a
Literally,
character or
Todd.
as a person?
I mean, it's because she is, from my point of view, so AI generated. She's half of the book almost. Yet, if you take my opinion, it's just him reading the back of his book that he liked, maybe doing a little bit of research, and the AI went off with that. And I think that her entire narrative is all like made up and doesn't really have anything to do with what I thought was the central character dynamic of Rafi and Todd.
It's so
I
funny.
liked her character
I
a
wrote
lot.
down, I got immersed in her chapters. I loved her as a character.
I liked her character a lot, but like viewing the overall arc of the book, and that's what I think,
wasn't
that's
necessary.
where I hypocritically, I've cornered myself into this very hypocritical stance. I know how good this book is because I loved it. I mean, I loved the multidimensional. Like, listen, last week, I'm like, keep to one character, do your thing.
You're saying you like all the characters.
I liked
after
it, and
normally
they were
you're
all
like, keep it
completely
single point.
unnecessary. It was like
Yeah.
Amy Tan writing about birds. I was like, I fucking love this, but I don't know why.
Yeah.
I think getting into the writing, like Richard Powers does a really good job of that. He does it in the Overstory too. That's kind of his thing. So I think it's unsurprising to me that you were happy with the many characters from the many point of views, Phil.
Yeah. Phil, it is weird too, because if you take my viewpoint, Evelyn is crucial because
Critical,
she
yeah.
is the whole inspiration by Todd. And I even wrote down, I'm like, what happened to Todd's love of the ocean? And then it comes back that he's building this like oceans and the cities, and he has that experience with the politician who's like, we need these small little communities to govern themselves. And then Todd's like, well, I like that too, because I'm a rich guy who doesn't want to be taxed, but I can find my love for the ocean again. And none of that happens without Evelyn's inspiration.
Right.
I had no idea
so
that we were going to have so many different views on what
Viewpoints.
this book was.
Yeah, same. And we all loved the book.
Yeah.
And we all read a different book. It's like one of those pick your ending books. Like, we all liked the ending we picked.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
The other thing, so I liked all the characters as well. We talked about this a little bit with R.J. Barker about him, and he said it really well. Like, I don't want to tell stories that aren't mine. And my only critique, like possible critique of this book would be, if you look at Richard Powers, he's just, a white guy that lives in Tennessee.
Okay,
is this
boys,
if AI just made this all, like,
he's making a meta point.
Yeah.
That AI is racist, and that is a huge issue in data quality.
Yeah, and I was going to say that too. The young Rafi character, he took a stereotypical, what an AI may stereotypically make a black person sound like from inner city Chicago. Like, I thought that was my biggest critique too, Isaac, was he was a little bit telling stories, and Evelyn being gay and not, being married to a man, that delved a little bit into, but again, like maybe the AI just took her love for diving with women and then made her gay because like
Yeah.
also very stereotypical.
You could go
you know?
so many places. And like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
I like from the get-go was like, I think Evelyn's gay. Why is she marrying this guy? And then like
Oh, you thought that.
3/4 of the way through the book, she's like, oh yeah, I love women. And you're like, I'm like, yeah, that's not surprising to me. And I have no idea why. I was just like,
Yeah. I think one of the things that he does, because you're right, like you can interpret this so many different ways. The only thing that I think that he might take a stance on, and this is my like only negative, I think he made this unnecessarily political at points by coming so close to reality.
oh yeah,
Where like
How
obviously
so?
he was like Playground was Facebook at one point.
yeah.
It was like the exact election. I like don't think that was necessary at all, and I could see how that would like detract.
people off.
And I just like I guess I just am not a huge fan of it
Reality?
being that obviously political. I don't know. I mean, yeah, reality, but also just like
I didn't mind. I
could've-
liked that. I liked it a lot.
interesting.
I
actually liked it too.
Was so like in line with, if you take these kids who grew up in the 80s, now they're coming into the age where they had the one guy who is all rich and powerful was like got into the internet at just the right time, had all this stuff, and now and it's not like he wasn't saying if it was, the book itself didn't get political. He was just mentioning all the things that are happening and then the influence that these people and systems that are currently like happening right now are having, and like the stock market manipulation, stuff in the election, the ads, all the money that's being made. I thought it was
relevant.
like spot on. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
I guess I think he could have done it without being so specific. That was a very, in 2016, Cambridge Analytica was a lawsuit. Like that was, and it just was like everything he was saying about that was taken directly from what happened. Which I get. Yeah. I mean, it's fine. I can see where your point was, Isaac. I guess if I had to find a negative, it would be that. But
The reason I think it worked, and because I think he did it with things that were not political as well, like Evelyn was based loosely on Dr. Sylvia Earle, who was a female diver. The Tektite mission, where she spent 2 weeks living underwater, that was a real mission that happened. So I do think there was other elements that he wove in that made it realistic other than the political thing. So I think I'm more
That's true.
likely to
I can
provide
definitely see that.
leniency with that because he was doing it so realistically throughout, not just politically. And I really
I
like
didn't
that
know
aspect.
I didn't know those, and so to me, like the only thing that was hyper realistic was
the
that,
political.
and it was like interesting. Like everything else could be fiction, except that was obviously taken from a true story. So, yeah, I can see with both of them. Then I do like it more for sure.
So I think the last thing I really wanted to say was that this book had so many good words in it. I only captured the one, and I wish I had more. I honestly couldn't even spell some of the words I was listening to, and so I couldn't even find them. But the Lilliputian, like the little or insignificant person, his dad told him like not to be a Lilliputian.
Yeah, that was
I think
cool.
that was I just think Richard Powers' vocabulary is phenomenal, and it shines through in this book. And I wanted to mention that. Did you guys have anything else about the writing you wanted to mention, or if you agreed with me or not?
I've said it already. The ocean descriptions were awesome. I was like, dang, I got to get into diving. I want to go snorkeling or like go see all that stuff. I thought the name dropping or the mentioning of all the random books was really cool. I started keeping, there's like 21 books that I wrote down that he mentions, but Rafi especially was such an eclectic reader that there's just like these, I don't know what these books are, but they all sound cool and really helped build the characters more about showing their outside interests a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was very interesting, the women being better at diving, like they did better with the Tektite mission. And this was the quote: "The press dubbed the crew of the Tektite missions Aquanauts, but the crew of Mission 6 reporters came with Aquabelles, Aquababes, Aquanettes, and Aquanauties. The journalists did not report the crew of Mission 6 consistently outperformed their male colleagues in almost every metric, from quality and quantity of their underwater research to ease of their close quarters cooperation. If an all-male NASA were really looking for proof that women could do research and perform well in space, they had data on every day of that 2-week adventure." I thought that quote was great, and I thought the quotes throughout were great. I know, Isaac, you probably had some quotes as well you want to share.
Yeah, and as I'm scrolling down my notes, I went on this whole rampage about AI being bad, but that was originally not my takeaway from the book, really. One of my critiques was, I was like, this was really good. There had to be a message, but I'm not sure what that message is.
And at the end of this, we're still a bit undefined.
Yeah, but two possibilities of those that I kind of came up with as I was taking notes were to have a life philosophy and play in that philosophy. This whole thing was called Playground, this idea of, where he built this AI social media thing where people can like go in and virtually play, but you also see the other characters playing in their own ways. And there's a quote that Rafi quoted Johann Huizinga, but he sent this in an email to Todd. "At the root of this sacred right, we recognize unmistakable the imperishable need of man to live in beauty. There is no satisfying this need save in play." So more to think about. I know I should have scrolled down my notes more and brought that up when we were talking about the plot, but yeah, I really like that. I got a lot, but you'll have to follow us on TikTok or Instagram to hear the rest of them.
All the other quotes. Yeah, check out our Instagram for all the other quotes. We're trying to make more reels with quotes, especially for this book, because there was just so many, as we've all said so far. I want to go into the ratings because I rated this a 4. I rated Playground a 4. And I don't know if I want to go. I was happy with that because I was reading about the whole potentially problematic telling of other people's stories and the whole diction, like Rafi's diction, I had kind of a hold up with. But then like hearing about maybe Isaac's theory and like this discussion, I'm willing to do a 4.5.
I think we need to be stricter with the 5 stars, because I think that what we're trying to do is pick all really good books. And the rating system becomes not good if we just keep giving 5 stars.
I think so. What I'll say is I think I'm going to grade it based on my takeaway, which was like just an overall, at the redemption story essentially at the end. And so I would say it's a 4 for me. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think that's super fair. I think that there were, in Phoebe, I feel the same inclination, because I think also that like, you guys just always bring elements that I hadn't thought of about the books out. And so I'm like, wow, this book was so multidimensional. But would that have been true if we hadn't talked about it for an hour and a half? So I'm going to go on my initial rating as well, which was also a 4, because in my interpretation, the ending seemed a bit like a cop-out.
What about you, Isaac?
I'm saying this is a 5. I'm saying this is the best book we have read on our book club so far.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. I wasn't expecting that when I started this book either. Way last year, one of our fun facts was, what do you like the most about a book? Or like, what is the most impressive thing about a book to laugh or cry? I think were the only 2 options. And I didn't cry to this book, but this book made me feel stuff. And I don't know what those feelings were, but I should probably go to my Sanctorum and journal them to try to figure it out.
Sanctorum.
Sanctum Sanctorum to try to figure it out. But this entire book, I had this like soul gripping feeling. I did not want to put this book down. And it just like made me feel stuff, which is so like, I don't know how else to describe it, but there was just so much feeling and emotion in this book. That like I would read this book once a year, because I think you could get stuff out of it, even if it is not the whole AI thing, just to like it tells a story.
The
You're having
quotes.
to like do a lot of looking, a lot of journaling,
Introspection.
introspection, yeah, and yeah, it was awesome. It was,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I'm really
I
glad you
I
enjoyed it.
Yeah, Isaac, I definitely see where you're coming from. There were points of this book where I was like, is this my favorite book ever? Is this the best book I've ever read?
yeah.
And then the ending for me killed it a little
Killed it.
bit. But I definitely think that that happens very rarely where I'm like, am I going to have to change my favorite book because of this book?
Yeah.
And I think that, yeah, I definitely see your vibes.
There was it was within the first 5 pages. I had to put the book down because I had this impending sense of my own death. Like I was like,
Yeah, I read that in your notes.
yeah,
This is-
Whoa.
I was like, I have
Isaac.
never really thought about dying before, but I think it was him being like, I have this disease that I
Right.
know within an X amount of time, very short amount of
Is
time,
going to kill
I'm
me.
not going to be my same person at all. And so right away I had this like, oh my God, this guy's trying to get out his story before he loses his mind, you know?
Right.
Yeah, it was,
yeah.
like I said,
So, Isaac,
you
what would
feel
you
stuff.
recommend then?
Well, I see that he recommended The Ministry of the Future, which I was literally going to say because I started reading that and I was like, this is like The Ministry of the Future. But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Which
of course
was
you love that
probably
book.
the Ministry of the Future I would recommend for kind of the same reason. Very different book, but
Yeah.
still at the same time you get this like sense of urgency from reading it.
Mm-hmm.
And I maybe that's what the feeling is, this sense of urgency. So yeah, and then I also wrote
Yeah.
Flowers for Algernon beside it because I was just trying to think of other books that like made me emote. That was like the first one that came to mind. But
Oh, I haven't heard of that, Isaac. That book. I'll have to read
Oh,
that.
I know a girl that reads that every year.
yeah.
Flowers for Algernon.
All right on. What was yours, Phoebe? Ministry of the
would-
Future?
No, so I stopped reading Ministry of the Future, so I don't feel like I can recommend it in good faith. But mine would be The Overstory by Richard Powers. It's if you liked this book, you would like that book. So I know it's a little bit of cop out, but I think it's worth the read. I think both of you would enjoy The Overstory.
Yeah.
Phil, what about you?
Mine's gonna be Same Bed, Different Dreams by Ed Park, which was on the short list for the Pulitzer last year. It had like the sort of sci-fi but not sci-fi vibes, and then like at the end, total mindfuck. So like that's yeah. I mean, really good book. I definitely worse than this one. I mean, this is the best book Isaac's ever read. So every other book is worse than this one, according to Isaac. So I think that this is like pretty close. Like I'm
Well,
not
for the
saying it's a bad book,
podcast,
but
he was
worse.
saying.
Worse.
This
for-
might
no,
be
I
my
think
this might
yeah.
be the best
Fave of
book
all
I've
time.
ever read. Yeah.
Well,
Although
yeah.
I'm reading Count of Monte Cristo.
Dude, I love Count of Monte
And I'm
Cristo.
realizing I've never
Oh.
read it. I kind
don't
of
think
know
I
the
have
story,
either.
but it is Count of Monte Cristo might be the best story.
You knew the story before.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Wait, should we read it for the book club?
No, it's
Comment
so
below.
good.
No, it's 1,200
Yeah.
pages.
Don't comment below.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yes.
it's really good. Ed Park, Same Bed, Different Dreams.
Cool. Great discussion. I think that was one of our best discussions because we all three got so different takeaways from the book. It's actually a little bit alarming and wild, but I think it just speaks to Isaac's review of the book. It really makes you think. And so we would definitely recommend everybody read this book, Playground by Richard Powers. And next time we are reading Fireweather by John Valant. Isaac, would you just give us a quick summary of that before we go?
Yeah. Fireweather explores the link between climate change and wildfires. The book tells the story of the 2016 Fort McMurray wildfire in Alberta, Canada, which destroyed much of the city and forced more than 88,000 people to evacuate.
Yeah, I'm excited to read this one. I think it's a bit timely too with the whole like Los Angeles fires just happening. We had picked this book before that even occurred, but it'll be very interesting to read about it. And actually, very exciting, we are going to have a guest. Phil, will you tell us a little bit about the guest that we are having on for Fireweather?
Yeah, so Neil Slayton is coming on. He works in environmental consulting, so basically helps companies make their products and manufacturing processes more environmentally friendly. So we'll see what his expertise has to show.
Yeah, and it was just exciting to hear another viewpoint on a book, especially like we just with this book, many different viewpoints can uh, come to many different conclusions. So, very excited to have him on, and we will leave you with our usual sign off, which is call someone that you love, tell them about a good book that you recently read, which could be Playground by Richard Powers. Go to your local library or use your Libby app. And until we talk again, stay classy, second pagers. We'll see you later.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.